the kids to bed, dad's home. We are the DWO podcast representing the dad world order. I am the handsome head of household, Mr. Magnificent Mike Martin. With me, as always, the rest of the dad wolf pack. He is big. He is strong. He is the wind beneath my wings. He is Big Rig Eric Murphy.
What up?
Last but not least, he is a perpetual mid-carder. And he is a world record holder. He is the wrestling t-shirt guy, Cephas.
All right, what up, y'all? How y'all doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Well, as Mr. Magnificent said, we are the DWO podcast, and tonight we have with us a very special guest, Mr. Mike Kingston of Headlocked Comics. Sir, how the heck are you?
Doing all right. When you said perpetual mid-carder earlier, I thought you were talking about me.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you got to show him. You got to show him.
I'm in the process of getting the Intercontinental Championship on my belly here. So
that is gorgeous.
Yeah, perpetual mid-carder.
The tattoo's not bad either.
Yeah.
Hey, we're off to a great start.
Great start. You get our humor.
Man, before we get too deep into it, man, I got to mark out for a second, brother. I have been a fan of you. I think I found you in 2012. So I don't know exactly how long Headlocked Comics has been a thing. I think 2012 or 2013 is when I found you guys. And I have been a fan ever since. Anytime I can pick one up, I've collected the ones from the pro wrestling crates. I've been a fan for a long time, so it's an honor, man, to have you on here. In my opinion, you are when it comes to professional wrestling art, you're up there with like Rob Schomburg, and you know what I mean. Like you're a renowned figure in my head. So thank you for coming onto the show, brother.
I appreciate that. The answer is 2008 is when our first book was published.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, been around a while then.
It was a slow process for a long time. I mean, none of what I do is easy, so it takes a lot of work. And I mean, what you see, this is where it all happens here in this room. Yeah. So, I mean, to publish multiple titles and to keep the schedule that I keep, and then I also work a full-time job. So I'm currently working as we speak.
Well, there you go.
So it's a hectic life. So it went really slow. It was slow for a long time, and then it kind of started to pick up some speed. So pandemic hurt. But
for those that are unfamiliar, this is what we're talking about. He makes these beautiful bad boys right here. And who did the cover art on this one?
Jerry the King Lawler.
Jerry the King Lawler.
Oh, wow.
Which, if you didn't know that, Jerry the King Lawler, fantastic artist. Really beautiful.
He co-created that book on the left. We co-created that one. Jerry didn't draw the picture of himself.
Hey, look at that. Look at the one I opened to, Cephas.
What'd you get?
Cardano.
Oh, looky there.
But yeah, just a lot of really cool stuff in here. If you're a fan of comics, I highly recommend picking one up. I actually wasn't. I was introduced to you. What was that? 2021, I believe it was, at Lexington Comic-Con. I was there with my daughter.
I think it was 22.
Was it 22?
Yeah.
Yes, it was 22. It was March of 22, and then we saw you later that year at Columbus.
Yeah.
Yes, you're correct. And just kind of walking around. It was my first time taking my daughter to a Comic-Con, and she was just enthralled with everything there. I mean, she was 6 at the time. And she was admiring all the art and stuff like that. And me and you I'm pretty sure we had like a 30 minute conversation, while everybody was getting autographs from the King right next to you. I was like, I want to talk to this guy, because it was really cool, man. Seeing, like, I didn't realize that was even a thing, wrestling comic book, and what a cool thing to create.
It's been a labor of love. Like I said, it hasn't been easy. There's so many things, like so many doors that we opened and stuff that just didn't exist. it was it's been a wild ride. Like there's a lot of stuff that we did that, you know, like we'll never get credit for or whatever, which is
Sure.
whatever. I don't care. I just always, I love wrestling. I love comics. I felt like they never made good wrestling comics. They were always these like, you know, shitty, hacked out licensed things. Like you can tell as a fan of things when something is made for money and something is made for love.
Absolutely.
And I was just like, these are just, you know, these old WWE comics and stuff. They're just sort of just hacked out and somebody's trying to make a buck off them. And it just became clear at some point, nobody was ever going to make the wrestling comics that I, as a lifelong wrestling fan, wanted to read.
Right.
So I made them myself. I took them to everybody in comics, every comic book publisher. I got laughed at. I mean, like, it's funny now because everybody and their brother is doing wrestling comics, but like in 2008, that shit didn't exist. And like, I mean, a guy from a large publisher literally laughed in my face. The comic store in the town I live in, the guy told me that no one would ever read it, wouldn't even carry it on consignment. So I started, you know, selling it out of my backpack at wrestling shows. You know, I'd go to Ring of Honor shows, put on the message board and stuff. And I started selling books that way. And then I worked 2 jobs for a whole year to make enough money to pay for like the first run of Story, which was work of art or a single step, and some t-shirts and some convention tables. And then I just started doing it, you know, little by little, grassroots. And the cool thing for me was that I'd see wrestlers at Comic-Cons, they would just be there as fans because a lot of Comic-Cons didn't have wrestlers signing and stuff. And, you know, they would buy books from me and then reach back out to me later on to tell me how much they liked them. So, and that started the whole process.
That's awesome. And I mean, I believe we had talked about a lot of, I guess, the more recent ones. You actually like co-wrote a lot of the stories with talent. Yeah, so I started doing Headlocked, which is a series it's an HBO style drama about a theater major who drops out of college to chase his dream of becoming a wrestler, and it's him sort of navigating the underbelly of the wrestling business. You know, it's sort of the girl gets off the bus in Hollywood kind of a story. Right. And so we started with that, and we did a few. I've done 4 volumes of that, and then a lot of the wrestlers wanted to do comics. So we started doing Tales from the Road, which are fictional short stories that I co-create with different wrestlers. We've probably done, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 of them by now.
It's probably my favorite thing that you do, man. That's when I see those pop up in the crates, I'm like, yes, this is what I want. Yes, this is what
especially I want. This past time.
Yeah,
no,
pop.
Oh.
Well, not only that,
it was a little unconventional. We just did like a pinup gallery for him because I didn't have time to work out a story. San Diego got the best of me, and
oh, trust me, we're going to talk about that because that looked awesome.
But so we did something a little bit different with Scott. But I'm gonna hopefully get a story out of Scott one of these days. We do a lot of shows together. I think we're doing a show in Salt Lake City in a couple weeks. So,
yeah, man, it's a lofty goal, but hopefully one day I get enough swell behind me with the DWO podcast and the wrestling T-shirt guy. And one day maybe I pop up in one of those particular things. You know, it's a lofty goal, but you know, hey, you never know unless you apply yourself, right? So
I do have a sort of a long-term goal to try to sort of expand out Tales from the Road to, you know, beyond wrestlers. And to try to just get different stories, and you know, because everybody's obviously got a different perspective. Yeah. And I can say from knowing so many people in wrestling, like there's like a whole nother layer of like stuff that, you know, that just people, there's like a whole nother level of experience, I think, that people don't see and whatever. I think it would just be interesting to see things from a couple of different levels of perspective and whatnot. So
I got a great story for you. 3 dads who all love pro wrestling come together to do a podcast.
Be a great story.
A tale as old as time.
That's right. I mean, and we kind of have that same philosophy, like in terms of booking guests for our shows. You know, a lot of wrestling podcasts you see out there, in my opinion, they're pretty much only booking, talent, like, the actual wrestlers on the show. And we kind of from the start, we're like, yeah, we want to get wrestlers, but like we just started booking everybody involved in the business because we're like, everybody's got stories from different perspectives. And we've gotten some really cool perspectives and stories. And it's been awesome.
Well, I also think the people that are on the fringes or on the outside or whatever, sort of more wrestling adjacent or whatever, probably have a little more freedom to speak about things. So
right, yeah,
that also helps.
Yeah, we don't have to go through agents to get the people who made the costumes. You know what I mean?
Right, and it's also, some people just don't want to ruffle feathers or they don't want to burn bridges because it's also, I mean, it's a very tight knit business. So somebody says something somewhere and somebody hears about it. So,
oh, and I mean, dang near every wrestling news site out there is reporting every interview quote that ever happens.
Sure.
So yeah,
and that's the thing. We're definitely not. You know what I mean? Like, if just yesterday you got in a public altercation and you smacked somebody, we're not bringing that up unless you bring that up. You know what I mean? We're not a drama. That's what we just want to have good time and celebrate wrestling because that's what we're here for.
For sure.
You know what I mean? We
positive
enjoy wrestling.
Vibes only.
Yeah, positive vibes only.
We actually got a question here for you, Michael, from Spears Studios. Where did you get your knowledge of breaking into the business from when you first started Headlocked?
I mean, I just read everything that I could. I mean, I subscribed to the Observer forever and a Torch, and I read every biography and stuff that came out. So I just tried to, understand it as much as I could from an outside perspective. And the cool thing was when I met wrestlers that would read the first issue or the first trade or whatever, they're like, oh, like you work in the business? I'm like, no, I never did. And they're like, well, you really nailed it. So
yeah, there you go.
I mean, that's always cool when people, at least, when you're striving for authenticity and then people, buy it. So
absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, if you're especially if you're creating the stories with the talent, like, yeah, they're going to have to be pretty authentic. Otherwise people are going to be like, what the hell, man? Right. If there's anything, wrestling fans take this business very seriously from what
especially
I've noticed.
Independent. But, that being said, the independent fans are definitely super loyal, and they definitely seems like the crowd that would want, we talked about before the show being the niche, but I mean, that's pretty much the crowd that we accompany to all these independent shows.
It's tougher now because I feel like that audience has been splintered a lot. I mean, really what AEW essentially did was they essentially did Ring of Honor with, a billionaire's money. And I mean, and that's what kind of killed Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor was a style that you couldn't get from WWE. And now obviously WWE's gotten, they've gotten more work rate oriented. I mean, not to an absurd degree, but enough that, I mean, the big allure for a lot of people who watch New Japan or Ring of Honor was just, this is a style that you can't see anywhere else. And now to a certain extent, the style is kind of homogenized. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's hurt the independents unless you have like these transcendent characters. I mean, there's always going to be, right? Like wrestling to me should always be consumed live. It's like jazz music, right? Like you listen to, like, I love going to listen to jazz musicians but then like if you listen to a recorder, it's elevator music, right? Like recording it steals its soul. Recording wrestling takes something away from it. And I mean, there's enough of it that obviously it's still entertaining, but I mean, there's nothing like seeing wrestling live. So, I mean, like there's always going to be people that are going to want that live experience and whatnot. And then there's going to be those transcendent characters like an Effie or a Danhausen or a Nick Gage or somebody that'll draw people out that you can't get anywhere else. But I mean, I think the days of just, 30 guys in black boots and black trunks or, dropping each other on their heads, like you can get that on TV 7 nights a week now. So
yeah, I often equate, wrestling, seeing live wrestling to seeing live music. especially when it comes to like seeing the big guys seeing WWE or AEW live versus seeing an indie show. There's just something more intimate about it. You know, you're getting to interact a little more personally with the talent, you know, or in some cases making an impact.
I mean, I think, you know, you hear the smack of the flesh, you hear the ring, you know, I mean, like it's just so much more immersive than when you see it on TV. And I mean, again, obviously I watch wrestling on TV all the time and I'm cool with it. I just think that, I mean, I saw Samoa Joe and Kenta Kobashi live in the New Yorker Hotel, and I've watched it on tape, obviously a bunch of times or whatever recorded, but I wouldn't trade that live experience for anything.
Absolutely agree. We just saw Takeshita versus Gringo Loco. And don't get me wrong, I would watch that on YouTube all day if you send that to me in a link. But the fact that I was there and I saw Gringo versus Takeshita, you know what I mean? Like, you hit the nail on the head. There's something to it that you get from being there live.
Particularly when you get like one of those events that everybody's just like, I would put the crowd for Joe versus Kobashi, I would put that crowd like pound for pound up against it, like a WrestleMania crowd. Like the per capita noise was insane. I mean, I've been to probably 20 WrestleManias maybe. Yeah, that's my all-time favorite live experience as a wrestling fan.
There was a chant at a Revolver show we went to, and it was SGC versus, I believe, ABC.
Rascals.
Was it Rascals?
Yeah.
But there was a chant that went on for a good, like, 4 or 5 minutes solid, just back and forth. And that's something you'll never get at one of those big shows, man. That was just unbelievable. I've never experienced anything like that since.
I mean, there's definitely, I mean, if you can get a good hot indie show, I mean, those are your hardest if you're hardcore fans. I mean, they're there for, you know what I mean? They're there for the wrestling. They're not there for the experience or, well, you know, they're there for it and they're there to pop for it. I mean, some of those early Ring of Honor crowds were nuts. Or even some of the GCW crowds that I've seen, just wild stuff.
Yeah, Ring of Honor now, the Tony Khan Ring of Honor is far different from the Ring of Honor that, you know, that I remember seeing back in a freaking field house.
Because Ring of Honor is, I mean, AEW is Ring of Honor with a different name. I mean, they took all the Ring of Honor guys, half of the Ring of Honor office, and just put it on a bigger stage.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, they don't differentiate the product enough. I mean, I do think the one bright spot there has been Athena. It's been great to sort of rehab her. I mean, she's been doing awesome.
And I like that they keep her mostly, you know, on Ring of Honor tapings. Not like, you know, Claudio's the male champion, and you know he's on every AEW show every week.
Yeah. No, I think that it would be better if they differentiated it a little bit, but kept it a little more stratified. But you know.
Yeah,
maybe when they get that TV deal.
Well, and like you were talking about, like a crowd and like being a part of moments. I mean, like I've been to, you know, AEW shows before where the crowd, like, it gets kind of loud, but then like the last Revolver show we were at, it was a madhouse the entire time we were there. You know, and it's it's marginally less people, but the atmosphere was awesome. I mean, we got to be a part of a moment that was actually pretty much constructed by us, mostly by wrestling t-shirt guy down there.
And we made 30 fuck Matt Cardona signs, and Matt Cardona had no idea they were there. In fact, the only people who knew were Sammy, who runs Wrestling Revolver, the cameraman, and a couple security guys, and Jake Christ, and that was it. And once we knew that match was coming up, we handed them out to everyone near the entrance. And when he came out and realized that there were 30 of the same exact signs that said "fuck Matt Cardona," bro, that was a moment.
That's excellent.
Yeah, here this is a screen grab from one of their promos of just us. It's one of my, like, I want to get this framed so bad. Like, it's awesome. I love it.
Afterwards, once everything was over and everybody was wrapping up, I went over and I told Matt, and I was like, "Listen, bud, like I hope that didn't offend you." You know what I mean? He's like, "Oh no, 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 no."
Oh no, loved it. I'm sure.
He did. He loved it. He thought it was
Yeah.
great, and it created a moment, man. And it helps out Revolver, which we are sponsors for Revolver, so we are definitely a bit biased. But man, if you haven't been to a pro wrestling Revolver show and you're anywhere near Iowa, Texas, or Dayton, Ohio, within the next couple months, you need to get your ass to one of their shows, man. There's something different about them. They have and I don't mean this by quality of wrestling because they have way better wrestling than ECW did, but they have an ECW feel in the respect that it feels like you're a part of something.
Yeah,
It's new.
it's on my list of things I'd like to do. I mean, obviously, I live on the East Coast, so Iowa's tricky for me, but it's always something I want to do. A lot of times, if there's a good show, it's worth my time. Like a well-attended show, I can probably make my money, cover my flight and everything.
Yeah, definitely. From what we were told, the Iowa shows, because I think they said they can get like 2,000 people in there if they sell it out. And
I like to vend everywhere. Like I'd like to go to every state. Like I grew up poor as shit. I didn't go to New York. It's funny I didn't go to New York City till I was 31 for Joe and Kabashi. That was what made me go to New York City for the first time.
Wow.
And I live 2.5 hours north. And now I've been so many places because of Headlocked. And it's allowed me to see so many places and be so many places and see a lot of the country. And it's been really cool. That's been a little side part of it that, in addition to getting to make the books and to collaborate with people that, I grew up watching and to, be friends with people that, were once my heroes. I mean, that's been a little.
Does it ever get normal? Because like even now, like with the people like we talk to and we're interviewing and whatnot, it's also surreal to me. Like I can't believe that we're talking to the people we're talking to.
So what's weird for me now is I've been doing it for so long, right? So most of the guys that are on top were on the indies when I started. So like I knew them before. So a lot of them are, just guys to me. You know what I mean? Like I was in GalaxyCon last weekend and I had dinner in the green room with Kevin Owens, and then I hung out with Orange Cassidy for a while. I mean, Orange Cassidy in another life was with me at a Comic-Con in 2009, like as part of a Chikara thing. And so, I mean, I've known him forever. I mean, I knew Danhausen before he had makeup on, like, you know what I mean? So in a lot of ways, a lot of the guys that are on top now are just guys that I know.
Yeah.
If I was backstage at Raw twice in the last 2 months, and I know so much of so much of the roster. So it's
crazy, man.
But there's still always a point where, like sometimes I got to stop and think about it, and I'd be like, oh, like Hurricane was one of my favorite wrestlers growing up because I was a comic book guy, right? And now he's like one of my best friends, and like we text every day. That's cool. Like, I mean, that's I don't think about it all the time, but sometimes I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's one of Cephas's like dream guest.
Yeah, that is definitely. We got challenged to top 50 guests we'd love to have and try to invite them all. To be honest with you, you were on that list, and you were the guy that challenged us. He said send emails or messages to 50 people you would love to be on your show, and you'd be surprised at how many people say yes. Don't get me wrong, he has not said yes yet, but at some point, Shane Helms, man. I mean, I got hurry powers too, dog. Like, I've been a fan of him and Shannon Moore and Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy, and I've literally met all of them except for Shane Helms. So at some point, I gotta meet that guy.
But gotta manifest it.
It's crazy when you talk about it like that because now they're just your buddies, and
it is like, I mean, you can just talk to people. Like Shane posted a picture on Facebook the other day, and it was just a picture of him, like 3 different eras of him, like when he was young and whatever. And so they made this like Hurricane like plush doll years ago, and it's awful. And it's got like these like super full lips and whatever. So like, you know, like I cut it together where I made that like the fourth picture and I texted it to him. You know what I mean? Like it's just funny because he's a dude now that I'm friends with, and I just send him shit to bust his balls. And
Yeah,
You can rip
that's
him.
awesome.
I love it.
and he'll do the same thing to me, you know, like it's.
Stand back.
But yeah, I mean, he's a super, super cool dude. And
Yeah, there
the
you go.
thing
Right.
that I like about Shane is that
There's a
he's always
hurricane
been, he's still like a fan. Like, even though he works in wrestling and he's been a wrestler forever, like, he's still a fan of stuff. He's still a fan of comics. Like, there's some people that get that, like, you know, it's your job and it's hard. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard for fans to understand sometimes that wrestling is a job.
Yeah.
Like one of the things that always trips me up is when I contact somebody for an appearance or something. I'll be like, hey, you want to come do this con with me? And they'll be like, oh, I have to check with work. I'm like, but they're talking about WWE. But it's just funny that, like, you know,
Wait, you get a shoot job?
To them, they're like, oh, I got to check with work.
Yeah.
And
Not a shift at the factory.
right, but it is, and
PTO.
it's so it's hard sometimes to, you know, for people to maintain a level of enthusiasm for, you know, and I think that's why a lot of wrestlers don't like to come on podcasts and stuff. I think sometimes because it's their job, and then you're talking about your job, and it's a lot. But and that's to a certain extent, I think, how I became friends with a lot of people, because like I approach people from a different angle, right? Like Helms, I'm approaching from a comic standpoint, or, you know, Rob Van Dam or Jerry. You know, Jerry, I approached Jerry because he did artwork. You know, everybody wants to talk about, you know, Andy Kaufman with Jerry, but I was like, hey, you know, I noticed you're an artist. Let's do, let's do some art. You know, I had a phone conversation with the Ultimate Warrior because he was a painter.
Was that when you released your first comic with Jerry Lawler? Is that the moment where you're like, yep, I made it. I'm officially in the wrestling annals. You know, this is my moment. Like, was that where you really felt like you did it, man?
I mean, I don't feel like I've ever done it, honestly. Like, I mean, I've been able to do a lot of cool stuff and whatever, but like, I mean, on some level, as long as I have another job, like, I feel like I haven't done it. And whatever, and it's fine. Like, I like having security as well. It allows me to take risks and maybe do some stuff that I wouldn't necessarily be able to do otherwise. Like, I like not having the pressure. I like to be able to go to a show and not have the pressure that if I have an unsuccessful show, I can't pay my electric bill.
Yeah.
So, you know, obviously when COVID hit, like if I was dependent on, I mean, I lost so many projects through COVID. I mean, if that was paying my rent, I probably wouldn't be in this house right now. So,
right.
You know, having a job that was stable through COVID, I manage a fleet of truck drivers for Target. And so, like, you know, they stayed open through the pandemic. So I had a steady paycheck through the pandemic, which allowed me to do some things that maybe some other artists couldn't, because, you know, you're sort of subject to the whims of the economy. So there's a part of me that I don't know if I'd ever want to give it up, just because I've been through some lean times. But I also, there's part of me that always wants that to be the goal, because every minute I spend not working on Headlocked is a minute I could be spent working on Headlocked.
Yeah.
I feel the same way, man. I'm trying to build a brand as well. And, you know, I don't care if Wrestling T-Shirt Guy and DWO podcast and everything that we're doing doesn't pan out. At this point, it's allowed me to have insane, awesome moments. I got Steve Macklin yelling at my face, you know what I mean? And I yelled right back at him. And not to mention all the moments that we have ahead in our future with all the great guests and stuff. If that's all I get, that's all I want, man. I just want to rub elbows with giants, man. And that's what we're doing, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, if it all ended tomorrow, like if I had to stop, I mean, there was a point this year that I thought I actually was going to have to stop. I had a rough year last year, like just outside of the comic thing, and we got kind of devastated, and work went crazy and whatever. And I thought I was going to have to stop. Like, I didn't owe anybody anything. And I was like, well, I mean, I could just kind of ride off into the sunset, and I've done a ton of cool shit. I got better stories than just about anybody I know. I mean, you know, we could, but I don't know. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, right? Like, this is what feeds my soul. It's, you know, I mean, obviously, like, the world's on fire, and you know, everybody's at each other's throats on, you know,
just Hawaii.
whatever. You gotta have something that kind of gets you out of bed, I guess. And
We talk about that all the time, man. Wrestling is therapy.
This is what does it for me. Like, I just want to make comics. I want to make comics with my friends, and I want to create with people, you know, that I respect. So, you know, the other day when I was at GalaxyCon, I was talking to somebody who was extremely famous about collaborating on a comic book, and I can't tell you who it is yet. But you know, and I'm pretty sure that they're going to do it. And they're like, oh, you know, we can split it. And I'm like, you know, whatever. I'm like, listen, we ain't got to split it. Like, I'm not exactly, you know, I'm not drawing the house here like you are. It's fine. I don't need your money. Like, I just want to jam creatively with creators that I respect. So it's like, that's what I do it for at the end of the day. Like, I'm the last guy taking money out of Headlocked. You know what I mean? Like, the artists are getting paid, the printer's getting paid, you know, everybody's getting paid. And then if there's something left, it's me. And that's fine. Like, I just want to keep making shit.
It's your baby, and you're keeping it going. I mean, if you have to take the, you know, like you said, the smallest piece of the pie, but that's what a proud papa does.
Right. My job makes sure that my mortgage is paid. So, you know what I mean?
You know, and having like a hobby, I don't even call it a hobby, but like a second job per se, you know, that it sure makes it a lot easier to get through the regular work day. Mm-hmm. You know, when you have something like this, or like you have, it's the light at the end of the tunnel a lot of times, and a lot of those hard days at work.
I managed warehouses for years. I managed truck drivers, blue collar dudes, whatever. I mean, I broke up a fist fight that started from two 40-year-old men that started from them making fart noises at each other. I once had to sweep up a 8-foot dick that somebody poured out of sugar on the floor. I mean, I've had to do some shit, you know, like it's wild when you're at San Diego and you're at like a Hollywood party and you're literally on the roof of the Hard Rock with, like, I remember I was at a party in San Diego on the roof of the Hard Rock with Samoa Joe and Paul Heyman and Hurricane, Maria Kanellis, and Stacy Keibler. And I was probably the least famous guy in that entire room. I mean, there was just Jamie Kennedy and Seth Rogen was there, and a cast of True Blood, like all these people.
Seth Rogen's right there.
Hold on. There we go. Everybody calls me Seth Rogen when I got my glasses on.
My bad. I didn't interrupt you, but I had to talk shit.
Oh no, that's fine. So I'm there, right? And the top of the world, and then, you know, the next day I got some dude in a warehouse telling me to go fuck myself. So, I mean, it keeps you humble, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
You're just like, oh man, this is, you know, but I also have good work stories too. So
there you go.
You kind of do what you can do.
Like you said, man, you know, and Sifa said it too, that wrestling is therapy. We've talked about this so many times, the amount of days that we've just been like, even times where we've just been like, oh, I had such a bad day at work. I don't feel like doing the podcast, you know, whatever. And then we get on here and the mood just immediately. I mean, these guys have seen me get on here. Like, I get home at 8:30 and like I'm making food for my kid and all this stuff. And then like we start doing it and the mood just shifts. And it's just a natural thing. And, you know, there have been times where I'm like, oh man, you know, maybe I should step back and focus on my shoot job, whatever. But at the end of the day, I'm like, no, this is what keeps me sane at the end of the day.
No, absolutely.
You know? So
plus, Doug, the second if you did, if you, the way I feel too, like, because there've been times too where I'm like, man, do I really have the time to commit to all this? Maybe I should step away. But then I think about the second that I do, you guys are going to book Paul Heyman on here. And I'm like, no!
And then you'll be like, maybe I got some time, and we'll be like, no, get out.
I will tell you, I am pretty sure that Paul Heyman is the devil. He is the most seductive human being. And obviously, like, I mean, he's not conventionally attractive or whatever, but I've met him a bunch of times, and every time I've met him, every time I talk to him, he has this way of making you feel like you're the most important person in the room. And I could see why all those guys were, running through light tubes when the checks were bouncing. I mean, he is a seductive dude. I met him on a boat at San Diego Comic-Con, and I had known Joe at that point. I knew Samoa Joe, and he was talking with Joe, and I went over and said hi, and Joe introduced me to Paul, and he just took my hand, and he said, "Oh, the pleasure is all mine." And and it's such a hack, corny, contrived line, but the way he said it made me feel, I was like, wow, Paul Heyman really kind of, I was like, he's like, wow.
He's happy to meet me.
This is awesome. This is great.
Unbelievable. And then later on that day, we went to dinner, and it was me and Paul and Helms, and I think it was either Daniels or Rob Van Dam. And some dude came up and asked Paul to take a pic, or if he could take a picture with him. And Paul, by the end of it, Paul convinced the guy to take a picture holding a nacho chip. And that's what he never took a picture with Paul. He took a picture like holding up a nacho chip. And I was like, holy shit, this guy's the devil.
I saw a post once.
He's so smooth.
And it was like Paul Heyman taking a picture with his daughter. And I'm looking, I was like, man, his daughter looks really familiar. And it was like a porn star actress. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy.
Really I can see it.
I think he has like a 7-year-old right now, and I believe the man is in his late 50s. So what a brave soul to have children at such a older age.
Yeah, I'm 43, I saw him. I cannot imagine having a small child. I got puppies, and it's a lot.
Yeah. I just saw him at Raw when Raw was in Buffalo, and I bumped into him in catering, and I was like, "Hey, Paul, I don't know if you remember me." He goes, "Oh, Mike Kingston from Headlocked Comics." Of course, I remember you. And like, I hadn't seen him in years, but it was just like, I was like, man, I'm like, I'd run through a wall for that dude.
That dude probably does have like a ridiculous, like, if not photographic memory, like close to it, and like that's why he's so just good at what he does. He just remembers everything.
I think the cool thing about, he's like one of my favorite things to watch, like, because if you watch him during the matches, he's always on. Like, he's always like, and never in a way that takes from the match. Like, he's not going overboard to where he's stealing your attention, but he's there, like, enhancing it. Like, he's doing exactly what he's supposed to do, but he's reacting to stuff. He's putting stuff over. Like, you would never see him in a shot where he's not doing, like, he's not on. And I think it's impressive.
Yeah.
And as much as the bloodline is getting all these accolades of being this great storyline, that storyline is absolute shit without Paul Heyman.
I mean, I don't know if I agree with that.
Brock beating Taker would have been a whole different moment without his face there. When he had his shock, like, holy shit, Brock beat him. You know what I mean? And then that moment was, I feel like heavily orchestrated by the face of Paul Heyman. That guy's got, like you said, he's seductive. He's got a magical way to make you, whether you hate him or you love him, you want to see what the hell he's going to do. You know what I mean?
This is impressive.
He really is.
It's impressive just to hear the. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I was just saying it's impressive. Some of the people that you don't think, like some of the guys that have just great minds for wrestling, and you know what I mean, that don't necessarily get credit for it or whatever. But like Helms to me has got a brilliant mind for wrestling. He was booking Omega when Omega was running, when they were all out of WWE, and like he trains Logan Paul, he trained Johnny Knoxville. Like, I mean, he's when I'm with him, like sometimes, if I go backstage at Raw, I'm usually with him, and like I'll just walk around and like he's just giving people ideas and stuff. And he's always just, I don't know, he just thinks about it the right way.
Yeah.
And
He's got that little bit of a lisp, you know what I mean? So he reminds me so much of, and I know this is just kissing his ass in a way, but he's like a modern day Dusty, the way he is imparting his knowledge, man. He's got his own little gimmick, man, and I feel it's cool to see him get his flowers, man. It really is.
yeah, no, he's great. I got so much respect for him.
So
I was just gonna say we got. I don't want to miss this question right
yeah.
here for you. Who is it that is paying the artist? Is it you out of pocket or the wrestlers?
Oh, I pay for
guess.
everything.
Yeah. Okay.
Everything. I try to. This is the way I've always kind of tried to function. I mean, as a writer, like I can write a script in a day. I mean, it usually takes me longer, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
an artist has got to work on that book for a whole month. So they got to be able to live. I mean, you can't, it's hard to, a lot of times I think people breaking into comics expect their artists to work off the back end or, future profits and whatever. And that's not a thing that, you're going to get right away. So, I mean, automatically you're kind of, you're kind of putting them in a bad spot. So I always try to pay my artists. I mean, I always pay my artists. I don't try to pay them. And then I try to work out deals with the wrestlers where that they can make some money, or, whether it's have them as a guest at my table, or if I make variant covers for them sometimes that they can sell, for the guys that move a lot of merch. I try to do something where everybody kind of wins instead of,
so
just so people benefit.
Speaking of which, I got to bring it up. Everyone who knows me personally knows that my favorite wrestlers, don't get me wrong, I like, your Undertakers and stuff like that, but my favorite wrestlers are your Santinos, your Danhausens. I really love the comedy aspect. And we showed a picture of this earlier, and I'm going to bring it back up. But when Danhausen recently broke his leg, you created a comic that you sold specifically for him and donated the funds to help him stay afloat, man. And that was one of the moments where I was like, damn, this guy is just a fucking kick-ass dude, man. Comics, wrestling, and he's looking out for the boy Danhausen.
Well, it's funny because, like I said, I knew him before he was Danhausen. I mean, he's always been Danhausen's name, but I mean, I knew him before the makeup and whatnot. And I also, I don't know, there's part of me that, I've benefited from a lot of people. Like, a lot of people have been really good to me. Jerry Lawler, insanely good to me. I mean, I'd never be able to pay that dude back for everything that he's done for me. Helms, Rob Van Dam, Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe, so many people have done good things for me, so I mean, I'd be a dick if I wasn't trying to put something back into the universe,
Right.
and to a certain extent, right? COVID kind of messed with everybody, and everybody kind of lost their minds on Facebook and whatever, and just kind of broke the world. And I kind of was, this part of me that feels like, I don't know, there's a lot that needs to be done with society. And should I be making wrestling comics? Is that a thing that the world needs right now? And I mean, no, but if I felt like if I was going to continue to be in this space, I was going to have to, I can't change how Congress votes about anything. I can't, I mean, I can obviously, I've got my vote and I can talk to people and whatever, but there's not a lot I can do to affect the macro direction of the world. So I try to make an effort to affect people in my circle, and this isn't to put me over or whatever, because it's just I try to commission artists. If an artist says that they're having trouble, they can't pay their bills or whatever, and there's something I can do with them, I'll be like, hey, why don't you do this pinup for me and whatever. I try to do those sorts of things to try to, I don't know, just be a decent human, I guess.
Well, and like you're saying, you may not be able to affect the, like you said, the macro, but start making some ripples, and those ripples become waves. You know what I mean? You help out, Danhausen or whatever, and then that does something in him, and he helps somebody out, and it just keeps on going. So
Yeah, I mean, it's just,
the little ripples can become a lot bigger ones, I think.
it just makes me, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like, and I also feel like, there's times when maybe I need some, it's the give a penny, take a penny thing, right? Like if I put enough positive energy into the world, the times that I need it, maybe it's there for me. So.
Absolutely.
See, I met Roddy Piper, and you talk about talking to about somebody about something other than what they're known for. When I met Piper, we talked about Hell Comes to Frogtown, and he instantly was like, "Oh, no one wants to talk about that. Let's talk about that." And there's this line of 200 people in line waiting to meet him, and he talked to me for probably 10 minutes. And I asked him, because at the time I was starting my band as a business, I was really starting to focus on my band. And I asked him what was important. He said to make sure to give people their moment. He was like, you may be having the worst time ever on a tour. You may be having, 5 shows in a row, and then you hate every day, everything, and you just want to go home and see your wife. But then somebody comes up and they buy that CD from you, and they want to say hi and they want you to sign it. All that has to disappear, because that moment for them is huge for them. While it may be just 15 seconds for you, that moment for them is a whole nother thing. They may idolize you. You know what I mean? So I think it's important to try to keep that mindset. You know what I mean? It makes waves, like Big Rig said.
I had so Piper. I had talked to Piper at San Diego Comic-Con a couple times, and one year we had talked, and he had agreed to do a Headlocked story, and then we were going to do it at Stockton Con in August, and he died 6 days before the show. The Ultimate Warrior was going to paint a cover for me. He painted, and he died. Like for a minute there, I was like, "Shit, should I just not be asking people to do stuff?" I was like,
"Stop asking legends."
Yeah, hey, move over, Randy Orton. But yeah, I had a long phone conversation with the Ultimate Warrior about me painting a cover for me and stuff. And I don't know, it's wild.
That had been so weird and surreal.
So
something as iconic as Warrior.
So this is a crazy story, right? So I see that he's got an art website, and he painted, but he only painted with a palette knife, which I thought was fascinating. He was painting like pictures of Buffalo, and like there was a picture of like Ronald Reagan and stuff. Like he was super conservative, whatever. But like the stuff was really good. So I was like, shit, if I get Ultimate Warrior to paint a cover, that'd be cool. So I sent him an email through his art website, and it happened to be, he called me, and happened to be on my birthday, right? Which is not that he knows this, but it's my birthday. He calls me. He's like, "Oh, it's just Mike. It's the Ultimate Warrior." I'm like, "Holy shit!" Right?
Oh,
and so then
I'd have been like, "Yeah, okay."
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like I felt the same way when Lawler called me the first time, but obviously some of these guys have, they have iconic voices.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So he, we start talking, and he's. Most of the guys that aren't, all the wrestlers that do art are somewhat insecure about their art abilities, except for Jerry, because Jerry's like an art god. But he's like, I don't know if I got the skills to do like a cover, and, whatever. And he's like, but I just wanted to call you and tell you to be positive about what you're doing and make sure that, and I was like, shit, the Ultimate Warrior called me on my birthday and he's telling me to be positive. Like, I feel like I'm like 9 years old.
Right. Yeah.
So then the kicker is like
the power of the warrior.
In the middle of this conversation of telling me to be positive, he has to get off the phone and yell at his kids. he's like, I told you I will take you to the mall when I get off the phone. And he's like, I'm gonna have to call you back. And he hangs up. And then he calls me back, presumably after he's done yelling at his kids, to tell me to be positive again. So that was awesome. That was a very surreal day.
Just
there's a lot of that kind of
slammed his kids, and then
sometimes it feels like the people that I talk to, every one of us have a Shakespearean story, and there's these serendipitous moments, man, that are just like, it's weird. Like I met this fucker in the line at a Danhausen meet and greet, you know what I mean? And now we have a show together.
Sure.
And we met because I was late.
the way
So.
that the butterfly effect works, especially in this industry, in the wrestling industry, is so interesting. It's just everyone knows everybody. You know what I mean? And sometimes you get real cool moments out of it, like that right there. You know, the Ultimate Warrior calling you on your birthday. If you'd have been able to travel back to 9-year-old Mike and be like, "Hey, dude, you know, sometimes there's going to be shitty days, but on your 30-something birthday, the Ultimate Warrior is going to call you. It's going to be awesome."
I mean, for over the course of 15 years, I've done so much cool shit. I mean, I was a guest at WrestleMania, the one in Dallas with Triple H and Roman. Like, 2K Sports had me in a luxury box that was like fully catered. I've been backstage at a bunch of shows. I was backstage at the Stephen Amell SummerSlam and the Barclays Center. I sat with Carrie Elways at a Comic-Con and had lunch with him and talked about Andre the Giant for like 45 minutes.
I love Carrie.
It's unbelievable. Like, just some of the stuff that, like, my dumbass, like this guy that, I make independent comic books out of my bedroom that like half of the universe has no idea that I exist. But like, you rub elbows with some of the most famous people. Run DMC knows who I am, or DMC anyway knows who I am. He makes comics, and I see him at shows. And like, I was at New York Comic Con, he like yelled to me across the room, like, "Hey, Mike!" And I'm like, "Holy shit!" Like, like the idea that like William Shatner knows who I am. Like, the idea that like these people that are this famous, like that I register in their. I was just at a show at GalaxyCon, and I was in the line for food. Christopher Lloyd is on one side of me, and William Shatner's on the other side of me, and then Richard Dreyfuss is driving behind me in a hover-round, and I'm like,
"What is happening?
What is even my life, right?"
Right.
Like, so
that's
wow.
So yeah, we had the same thing, man. We said we sponsor Wrestling Revolver, and we went to a lot of their shows before we were sponsors, and we would always pay for the meet and greets. And this time, we were in the meet and greet, and we signed autographs, and it's just like, wait, what? Like, what is life right now?
Like, yeah, we had a merch table next to Masha Slamovich, and we were just like, kind of bullcrapping and stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is normal.
I'll never forget the first autograph I ever signed was at San Diego Comic-Con, and it was completely not what I expected. It was a 58-year-old black woman, and I was like, wow, I was like, you are the exact opposite in every demographic that I ever could have imagined.
No, no.
When I imagined this moment.
Yeah.
I was like, sometimes that's your biggest fans, man. You never know.
Yeah, it was cool though. You know what I mean? Like, it's funny. Like, you never try to lose sight of that stuff. I mean, like, I've been doing it for so long, and
yeah,
I kind of what I do hasn't really been done. Like, I exist like outside of comics, but yet I make comics. Like, I don't sell my books in comic book stores. I mean, some comic book stores might carry them from me, but like, I don't use the comics apparatus. Like, and I publish multiple books. Like, I mean, it's a wild little existence that I have, but I try not to lose sight of, like, I still remember, I do these things about breaking into comics and stuff, these little panels and stuff, and you never forget, like, that first, you open in the box for my first book, when I got the preview book for Headlocked, like, open in the box and just that smell, that comic smell, unbelievable.
Oh.
Bro, I don't think you've lost that one bit, man, and at the risk of sounding like a total mark, dude, you're one of the people I look up to in this industry. You know what I mean? I don't know if you realize how much of an impact you've made on people, but the very fact that you said yes to be on our show, man, we don't have thousands of viewers yet. We don't have thousands of viewers yet. We get a decent amount, but you're still willing to come on here and talk with us and have a good time with us, and man, that shows a lot that you still give a shit about this industry. And
I also think it's right. Like, you want to be amongst your people,
Yeah.
Like, when I was a kid, I mean, I'm older than people think, but whatever, like, wrestling and comics weren't cool. Like, I was, people would mess with me because I played football, but like, I was like a double nerd. Like, and like, when you met somebody that liked wrestling or comics, like, you were like instantly brothers. Like, that was just the thing. Like, and it's still kind of like that to a certain extent. Like, even
Oh, it
though like
is.
you have all
dude.
these comic book movies and stuff, like wrestling is definitely more accepted. But like people are like, oh, you write comic books? Oh, do you know how much my Wonder Woman is worth in my basement? Like, like that's
$6. I'll give you
like
10.
it's a weird, So like it's always good to sort of be around your people. That's why I love doing
Yeah.
shows. Like shows are expensive. Like people don't. I'm a guest at some shows, but a lot of shows I got to pay my own way, and I got to pay to be there, and then hopefully I sell enough shit to cover it and whatever. But like, just the energy from being out there and being amongst your people is is really affirming. Like, obviously, I told you I manage truck drivers, and like they don't understand this part of my life. Like that's
Right.
not that part of my life isn't going to get fulfilled or whatever. So you got to go out to the go out and you just want to be with your people. So
Yeah, man.
Well, yeah. Here you got a guy checking out your website right now. Said the Judgment Day art.
If we're gonna
we have one of the few things that you can probably get that's been signed by all 4 members of Judgment Day.
That's pretty cool.
We're gonna talk covers. I gotta talk my favorite cover that you've released, man. And this is just because I'm a Super Nintendo nerd. This one right here, dude. Shit. In the Nintendo seal style, like everything about this. When I opened this crate, I was like, oh my God. I called my brother. I was like, look at this. Look how neat. Look how neat this is.
So we're doing a Kickstarter for Volume 3 for Tales from the Road. Hopefully at the beginning of the year. I'm just trying to get the lineup set. It's always tricky because I try to focus on, you never know, like some people that are available at a certain time might not be available at a later time. So try to find that balance. But I think that story is going to be collected in there. We're working on a variant for Cole that I think is going to potentially top that. I don't know. We'll see.
And
Well, man, I know you don't sell ad space, but if you ever were to want to sell some ad space, I know a certain podcast that would probably buy an advertisement in a comic book, or maybe pay for one of the characters to just wear a DWO shirt. Whatever.
Be pretty cool.
We can talk off of here.
We usually have tiers for that in the Kickstarter. Like that's one of my favorite things about the book is that when we do the Kickstarters, we do tiers where people can be drawn in.
Oh,
and
really?
Like we have higher end tiers where people can be drawn in as wrestlers. So some of the main characters in the main Headlock story are people that pledged at the beginning to be characters in the book, and then the cool part about it is like as time goes on, right? Like stories are created with those characters, like additional stories. So like there was a guy in Tales that had got the thing for Tales from the Road 2, and we just do pinups for the characters, or like we make like magazine stories or stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then we eventually go back to those characters, but then I use that character as a supporting character in a Booker T story. So like not only was he in that book, like he's in another thing down the road. Like when Phil Singer Games made a Headlock expansion pack, some of those characters are people that had paid to to support it. And so to me it's kind of cool because nothing I have would exist without the sort of grassroots thing that we built. So like the people who supported us or support us in the way that helps us the most get the most benefit. They're like literally a part of the story now.
That is so awesome.
And that makes me
genius.
And I try like I look for places to put people into. Like I look for places to put those characters into just because I want those people to to get the benefit of because they're there are a lot of some people have backed up at like $500 levels and stuff, and so like I want those people to make sure that they get their money's worth.
Yeah, for sure.
So man, I'm checking out Phil Singer Games right now. I've never heard of these guys till you just said something. Holy shit, how have I never heard of these people? And I need to get I'm just now, and these guys will tell you, I'm not very technology savvy. And
no, he's basically a 75-year-old man when it comes to technology.
I've missed out on a lot of shit. I didn't know that you had Kickstarters because I'd already been on that shit, man. Like I said, I've been a fan for a while, so I'm learning. You know what I mean? We're going to maybe have to contact some of these guys at Phil Singer Games. Maybe we could talk to one of them on one of the episodes. They look like they got some interesting shit on here.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I read all the PWIs and stuff, and they used to advertise in all the PWIs. So that's how I knew who they were, and I was like, oh man, that's so cool that they wanted to do something, and so that part of it's cool. But that's the sort of, I don't know. You got to take care of the people who take care of you, kind of thing. So
yeah, for sure.
But like so many of the main characters in the book now are actually people that
That's so awesome.
support
Yeah.
us.
So is Tales from the Road 3 your next big project? Is that what's next on your plate?
We're working on Volume 5 or Headlocked. Tales from the Road 3 is probably next. I've got a couple of things that are up in the air with some big names. And then in Volume 1 from Tales from the Road, I did a short story with Gangrel about a guy that trains Bigfoot to wrestle. We're going to spin that out into an actual series.
That's awesome.
And then I'm supposed to do another fig story with Cardona and Myers. I should be doing a story with Trish Stratus for November, I think. And I've got a couple of high profile things that, the thing about me, I guess, is that, I don't know. I'm never afraid to ask the question. I will ask people that are well beyond my purview. Sometimes you just gotta ask the dumb question, and maybe they'll say no, or maybe they'll ghost you or ignore you or whatever. And that shit happens. But
listen, if there's one thing we can take from today's show, ask the question, man. You said yes to us. You never know, man.
You
That's
gotta
my
ask
kids
the
all the
question.
time. Don't be afraid to ask the question.
But also, right, like the other thing about asking the question is it's one thing to ask the question, but like you also have to present, like, one of the things that I've learned, one of the things that I try to do is you try to be a part of the community that you're in, right? Like, so like I do these I get friend request on Facebook, and then immediately, hey, look at my Kickstarter. I'm like, all right, that's kind of shit.
Want something from me,
you know what I mean? Like, I've backed like 300 Kickstarters. Like, I'm part of that community. Like, I try to, like, a lot of times people come and ask the question, but it's, what can you do for me? And I think the trick is to phrase it, or whatever. You want to be able to come to, because nobody needs you. Nobody needs me. Nobody needs anybody, right? Like, particularly the people, when you're asking those questions to those people, they don't need you. So you have to figure out a way that, you know what I mean, that's going to tickle them in some fashion, or it's going to, maybe you're going to make them money, or maybe you're hitting a sweet spot that they have that doesn't get talked about or whatever. But like, the trick is to come at them from a place of their passion, because your passion is wrestling, but that's their job. You know what I mean? So like, I did a video game story with Adam Cole, and he loves it. You know what I mean? Like, he loved it. We loved we worked on the covers, and like, he loved all of it. And, Cardona, the figures, you know what I mean? You got to find I don't know. It's always, it's a tricky when you're asking the question. You just got to make sure that it's not, hey, what can you, famous person, do for me, non-famous person? Like, you gotta.
Hey, well, that's what I've always wanted when we have guests on here, is to, like, I want them to enjoy themselves too. I don't want it to feel like, oh, I got to go do this podcast, like,
sure.
I want them to come on here and enjoy themselves. So,
and it's hard because, I mean, listen, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've been on some rough podcasts. And it's, you know what I mean? Like, so for a lot of people, sometimes you have enough of those bad experiences and they don't know you know what I mean? Like, it sort of sours the pool for everybody.
Well, yeah. And we know there's a ton of them out there. Trust me, like, just being on social media, like, the amount of podcasts that are like follow for follow. And, like, we've made a lot of friends and stuff like that, but there's some of them out there that I'm like, this shit sucks,
Trust me, I pay for subscribers. Mm-hmm. If we have one subscriber, one follower, but we're still having fun, then it's all worth it.
100%. And that's ultimately that's the best thing, right? Like, when people come to your table, I mean, and they're excited about the things that you do. When I had done Columbus, there was a girl who loved all of my books, and like she literally ran over to the table, and like that Sunday I was having such a long day, and I was just tired, and
I remember talking to you that day. I was standing right there when she ran up.
Yeah, and it's just, you know what I mean, like that does that Grinch shit on your heart, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like and that's those are the moments that kind of.
You want to hear a funny story though?
What's that?
We actually met her like 3 months later at AEW house show.
It's a small community, man.
We were doing the meet and greet or whatever, and she like came up to us. She's like, "Oh, you guys do a podcast?" And I was like, "Were you at GalaxyCon Columbus?" And she was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "I remember you marking out over Headlocked." And she was like, "Oh yeah, that was me." And whatever.
Yeah.
So
no, but man, it shows you, dude. We're all swirling around in the same soup.
The wrestling community is so much smaller than people imagine. Like that's why it's tricky sometimes to.
And it's not nearly as negative as the internet would have you believe. No, not at all. I mean, there's definitely people that are just terminally online, and then there are people that have built their personalities around that. And unfortunately, outrage drives the algorithm, and that's a problem. I think it's a problem that everybody reacts to outrage, instead of, everybody's got the quote tweet was like the worst thing that was ever invented because everybody's got to get their jokes off, but then they're boosting this guy, and then invariably you're just expanding the person's audience while you're making fun of them. So it's tough, but yeah, I mean, I by and large I find wrestling fans to be, there's always tough ones.
I think it really is it seems like there's a lot of them, but they're just the ones that are barking the loudest. Like by and large, the amount of people we've met in the wrestling community have been positive. We've loved meeting them. We've became friends with a lot of them. And then you get those ones that just bark really loud and they're posted all the time, and you just kind of got to ignore it.
Well, I think every form of entertainment has those fans. I just think because wrestling is small, it seems like a larger part of that. But I think it's tricky. Some people build their whole personality around a company or a wrestler or whatever, and then they feel like they have to defend them constantly. I've been so lucky in like 15 years. I really haven't hit too many toxic people, and I think it's because I'm not playing with the toys, so to speak. I'm making comics and I'm doing stuff on the outside. I'm not doing branded stuff. I think when you start playing with people's, you know what I mean? Like
you're a shill. Yeah.
My buddies that write for Marvel and DC just take so much flack because everybody has this sort of idea about how they want their heroes to be. And like when you play with Scarlet Witch, you're playing with Scarlet Witch for everybody, but everybody has a different idea. It's like Batman, right? How many different versions of Batman have existed? So he means something different to everybody. But when you're writing the Batman book, like, there's going to be people that are mad it's not Adam West Batman. There's going to be people that are mad it's not Denny O'Neil Batman, whatever. So,
who's your favorite Batman?
Ooh.
Good question.
I don't really have a favorite Batman. I don't know. I mean, like, I think they're all fine. I think they got a little crazy at one point, when there's that Batman could take down the Justice League kind of stuff or whatever, when Superman could really just incinerate him with his eyeballs. But I've always been a Marvel guy more than a DC guy. Like I've always thought that the Marvel characters were very grounded and they all had flaws, and like most of the DC guys were sort of just gods, and they were less relatable to me.
I get that,
but I mean, I'll watch anything.
Bruce Wayne is a tortured soul.
I think it's interesting that everybody sort of goes through this journey on their fandom. Like you fall in love with it as a kid, and then you like it for whatever. Like I mean, most people's entry to wrestling was WWE in the 80s or whatever, Hogan and all that stuff. And then at some point, you don't want to stop loving it, but you're kind of embarrassed that you don't want to tell people that you like kid shit. So then you need it to be more. Like you need wrestling to be more. You need the Justice League to be grim and gritty. Like it can't be superheroes anymore. It's got to be more adult or whatever, because you're embarrassed to tell people that you like kid shit. and it's fine. Like, you know, everybody's got to sort of dress up their vices, you know, like how many people that drink, you know, they do wine tasting, right? Like, it's fine. You're an alcoholic. It's cool. Like, just admit it, right? Like, nobody.
As Mike takes a sip of his bourbon.
Nobody's getting a flight of soda.
Hey,
Right?
you guys want to do a blind tasting? Mike, it's Tuesday.
And it's fine. It's fine. Like, you just got to be comfortable with it. But then when you get older, right? Like, then you sort of come back to the thing that you loved about it because you don't give a shit what people think. But like when you're in your 20s, like you need wrestling to be more than it is. And that's why, like, oh, it's, you know,
That's where we're
at. That is so true, man. Like,
yeah.
And it's funny now, like we telling people, you know, I'm 43 years old and telling people, you know, when I'm not at work, I'm spending my time, you know, going to professional wrestling shows and talking about professional wrestling online. And people, you know, I don't get negative reaction even from people who aren't into wrestling now. It's always, oh, you know, I watched as a kid, I loved it, and I love this person, or I watched it with my grandparents, or I watched it with my dad, or somebody always has something positive to say about it, even if they don't keep up with it now. And that always impresses me because I expect to catch flack.
The people that stick with it though, right? Like it's, you know, when you're in your 20s, it's hard to tell girls that, you know, you want to watch, you know, oiled up hairless men pretending to hit each other. I
had the life-size stand-up of The Rock with the WWE championship over his shoulder and like can you smell what The Rock is cooking tapestry hanging on one side of my bed. There was a mirror on the other side, but that's another time.
I mean, I just think, you know, I think in a lot of ways people would probably just be better off if they just were comfortable with the shit that they liked and didn't worry about what people thought of them. But those are the people that go into, I think, toxic slides when, you know, your whole personality is built around, you know, Iron Man or whatever, or WWE, and then you can't admit when something's wrong. I mean, and both big companies have their toxic fans where they can't admit that there's issues. And it's fine. I mean, but it's annoying.
It is. We don't support tribalism.
Mike, I gotta thank you again, man, for coming on. We definitely we've already went over our 1 hour limit. We don't want to keep you on here for too damn long, man. But man, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on here. Like I said, you're one of my heroes in the industry. So to have you on here is pretty cool. And I hope that you are able to continue doing this until you're even grayer than you already are. You know, I hope you're able to do this until you feel comfortable enough to leave the game.
Yeah, it's I got some cool stuff in the works. I mean, I wrote a horror screenplay that we're trying to adapt into a comic. I wrote a horror screenplay during the pandemic that we were going to film with a filmmaker friend of mine, but and kind of indie film kind of cratered for a minute after the pandemic. So now we're gonna.
If you ever need extras, you know, I'll catch a flight to New York.
We're gonna convert it to a comic and try to pop it that way. Like I said, I got that Gangrel thing that we're gonna try to develop into a series.
Awesome.
I've got another project that's actually set up in a movie studio right now. I wrote a 1-issue comic for an action figure tie-in, and I just figured I would never have to write anything more for it, and I just got pretty fucking weird with it, and somehow somebody at a movie studio saw it and they really liked it, so now I got to write the whole thing. But
yeah.
So that should be you should be able to announce some stuff for that pretty soon, at least for the comic part of it. But yeah, I've been fortunate, and like I said, man, at the end of the day, if it all ended tomorrow, like I got to do so much cool shit. So I just want to make comics as long as people will allow me to make comics.
Man, anytime in the future you have any projects going on or anything at all and you want to come talk about it, you're more than welcome to come back. We absolutely have enjoyed having you on. Is there anything else you want to plug besides I think you got a Kickstarter coming up, right?
I'm hoping to have it launched by I'm doing GalaxyCon September 1st through the 3rd in Austin. I'm hoping to have it launched at that show. But I have right now I'm smooth I'm taking most of August off. I got to caught up on some stuff, get the Kickstarter together. And then I'm doing GalaxyCon in Austin, and then Baltimore Comic-Con the week after that. I think it's Flower City Comic-Con in Rochester, New York the week after that. And then Salt Lake City FanX with Scott Steiner the week after that. So it's going to be a heavy little stretch there, and work 7 days a week.
We need to talk to Cincy Comic Con to get you there.
Yeah, man.
That's the shit. I mean, you gotta let them know. I mean, if people, obviously, I'll go to any show that they bring me in.
Yeah,
you know, if I can
get
work
a little harder this year now that we have something.
But that's what I always tell people. You got to tell the show that you want to see the guests, and they're usually pretty good about it.
Like we all need to individually message Cincy Comic Con.
Yeah,
that's what I was gonna say. We've kind of have some lofty goals. We want a show named after us, a DWO sold out, if you will, is one thing we want. And I now have another goal, and that is being at a Comic-Con doing a live podcast next to Headlocked Comics. So
yeah, there you go, man.
I mean, that's probably something we can make happen.
I would love that.
Did you do Squared Circle?
I haven't yet.
You should.
For whatever reason, it's bumped with stuff every time because they've reached out a couple times, but
I say it seems like a good fit. Like it's
signing shows are tricky though. Like if there's too many wrestlers, because you can buy my stuff online, right? Like you can only meet those people at that place. So like, I try to be careful. Like some of those like Legends of the Ring type shows or the big event, like some of the like more autograph oriented shows, I don't necessarily do as well at, just because,
I can see that. Okay.
I'll go to them to network and stuff if there's people I need to do business with or somebody I want to talk to, because obviously it's better to do stuff in person. But and I like to vend. I want to vend in like every state. So I'm trying to reach into states that I haven't had a chance to vend at yet. So that is on my list. I don't think I've ever done a show in Indianapolis or Indiana for that matter.
Okay.
That would be a fun one to do if we did live pod from Squared Circle with Headlock.
For sure, or even if it's whatever. Like I'm sure Indiana has a Comic-Con or whatever, or Lexington or whatever. I mean, if you can get a panel, that's all you got to do is you apply for a panel, and then if we can get one of the guests at the show to be on it, then you're golden.
Oh man,
it's easier than you think.
DWO, Mike Kingston, and Kevin Nash putting it into existence.
That one might be harder than you think.
You think that, but I got Kevin Nash to shoot one of my record videos with me. Everyone that I talk to in the wrestling industry, when I tell them, I wear a different wrestling shirt and I make a video, and I like to get wrestlers in on it. If they seem hesitant, I bring up that Kevin Nash did it, and they're all like, "Oh, well, if he did it."
It definitely helps. I mean, having Jerry attached to my book obviously opened so many doors for me. That's why I can never, thank him enough for everything that he's done for me. I mean, just him doing covers for me, people are like, oh, this guy's okay. Like it's one of my favorite things when like I've been able to go into locker rooms or like, I go to see somebody that I know and they have like a, like a carny little agent, whatever. And the guy tries to start selling to me and the guy's like, no, he's okay. Like, I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm on the inside, right? Like, I'm one of the boys.
Yeah, that's
start walking like,
right. The guys hit me with the combo price, and the guy's like, no, it's cool.
25 for each.
Right.
Together, it's 80.
Heck yeah.
Wait a minute.
All right, man. Well, on that note, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up for the day. Eric, you want to do the duties?
Absolutely. Well, as always, we have been the DWO podcast. I am Big Rig Eric Maffey. He is Mr. Magnificent Mike Martin. He is Wrestling T-Shirt Guy Cephas, and he is the creator and proprietor of Headlocked Comics, Mr. Mike Kingston. Thank you so much again for coming on.
Thanks, Mike.
This has been awesome.
Inspirational.
I met you twice, and now we get to do this, and I hope we get to do it a lot more.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Go ahead and give us a like, give us a subscribe, all that good stuff. It really helps us out. We got a lot of momentum, I feel like, right now, and we'd like to keep that going so we can bring you really cool stuff and content and whatnot. Because you know what? We're all dads, and we got shoot jobs. So go buy our shirts and stuff, and then we can, give you a lot more cool stuff.
We put it all back into this.
We really do. Really do. It all goes right back. Pro Wrestling Tees, Public, Cephas.
Not Teesprings. Sorry.
Definitely not.
Don't even say the word.
Hey, man, Teesprings is a decent company.
I know. We just don't have a store there yet.
We just need to make a store on there. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Until next time, Top Dads out.